Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar on how to test, report, and monitor WCAG compliance. I'm Sugandha. I'm the Product Marketing Manager at BrowserStack, and I'll be moderating the session today. Ensuring accessibility and inclusivity is not just a regulatory requirement, but a moral imperative. Today, we will delve into the intricacies of the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines and the European Accessibility Act, and explore practical steps to achieving compliance. We have an exciting lineup of speakers who bring a wealth of knowledge and experience in accessibility and compliance. Our first speaker is Ashutosh, a senior product designer at Grab based in Singapore. Ashutosh specializes in creating data-heavy products while consulting with consumer-facing apps from the accessibility point of view. Over to Ashutosh to tell us about himself and his work, please.
Hi, my name is Ashutosh. As Sugandha has already mentioned, I am a product designer. I started working with accessibility back in 2019, and I've been an accessibility advocate ever since. Currently, I'm working with MATF, who are writing the very first draft of WCAG, but especially for mobile apps. So glad to be here.
Great. Thank you, Ashutosh. Our second speaker is Shambhavi. Shambhavi is the product manager at BrowserStack, leading the accessibility testing product line. She has been instrumental in shaping the direction of BrowserStack's accessibility solutions. Shambhavi, could you please share more about your role and your journey in accessibility?
Sure, thank you. Hey everyone, I'm Shambhavi and I'm a product manager at BrowserStack. So I've been with BrowserStack for about 2 years now, and I've been involved in building our dedicated product for accessibility testing that helps organizations ensure that digital products are usable by everybody, regardless of their abilities, and that they meet accessibility standards.
Thank you, Shambhavi. Now, before we begin, here are a few housekeeping items. This session will run for an hour with 15 minutes reserved for Q&A at the end. This session will be recorded, and the recording will be made available to all the participants. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type in them into the Zoom Q&A box. We'll address them during the Q&A session at the end. Without further ado, let's jump into the content of the webinar. Right. Here's our agenda for today. We'll begin with a comprehensive look at the WCAG and the upcoming European Accessibility Act. This will help set the stage to outline the standards. Next, we'll delve into some of the common challenges that orgs face when they are striving to meet accessibility standards. We'll then move on to proven strategies and methods for achieving and maintaining compliance. Our speakers will share their insights and experiences to help you implement these best practices in your own organizations. We'll then move on to BrowserStack's product demo. Finally, we'll open the floor for a Q&A session. We have a lot of valuable information to cover, so let's get started. Beginning with an overview of why accessibility matters and the WCAG guidelines. Ashutosh, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sugandha. First of all, thank you, BrowserStack, for allowing me to speak at this webinar. This is a great opportunity. We talk about accessibility a lot, but let's address the big why we need accessibility to be in place. Of course, there are a lot of laws that are coming in. ADA in the US, Section 508, again in the US. Canada has AODA or AMA. There are a few guidelines and regulations in Australia, Japan, and UK as well. We also have European Accessibility Act coming up, which Shambhavi will cover in detail in the later phase of this. But again, in my personal opinion, these are all the wrong reasons to make our products accessible. Let's look at the statistics. We are looking at 1.3 billion people who suffer from some form of accessibility. That is one in every 6 people. If you take Europe as a very short, if you take Europe, the value changes to 1 in every 4 adults, and 37% of the Europeans use at least one accessibility feature, like increasing font size and everything else. The most important factor or the statistic that we need to look at is they have estimated $8 trillion of disposable income. And because of their disabilities, they have to maintain on their memory and habits to make sense of the world around them. And that's why making the apps accessible. And they also prefer, 56% of the people have preferred a particular e-commerce website over the other because the first one was accessible. So that is what the power of accessibility is. And now towards the selfish reason, why we need accessibility practices to be in place. We are getting older. And as we grow older, our changes, the way we interact with the digital content is going to change. We have all seen our parents' phones, the big font sizes, the extra brightness, and everything else. So we need to place the right processes in right from now, because the younger generation that will come to replace us will not face those problems. So for a selfish reason, we need to start going into the accessibility practices right now, so that we leave the world behind. We leave the right practices behind for our next generation to follow. If you can move on to the next slide. So let's cover a few basics of accessibility, and these are the topics that I'm going to cover. So basically, accessibility has 4 principles. First one is perceivable. That means if everyone, including the people with disabilities, can sense the existence of an element on the digital screen. Operable, the second principle, is whether all people can interact with that specific element that they have just sensed. Understandable means can the user and the application understand each other's needs. And robust is more has to do more about the compatibility with the subsequent releases. There are different types of assistive technologies that exist in the world, but when it comes to digital accessibility, there are very few tools that I would like to discuss here. For visual impairments, there is talkback and voiceover. We also have for minor visual impairments, the increase in font size, high contrast mode, and everything else. For auditory impairments, we generally provide text transcripts so that the people who cannot hear the content can read the content while everything is playing. For motor impairments, where you cannot use your appendages or limbs or fingers, we have something called switch access. Google and Apple are doing fantastic jobs in developing their eye tracking technology and Project Game Face. And for cognitive impairments, we need to reduce flashing in the applications, reduce motion. There are guidelines and checks in place. Moving on to the compliance levels, there are 3 levels of conformance: A, AA, and AAA. And I have heard this question multiple times: which one should we choose? The ideal answer is you should always go for AAA. But the problem is, as you move on to the higher level of standards, the problem is the cost of research and investment and expertise that are needed to achieve said compliance increases. So globally, people have accepted AA as the global standard, the agreeable standard. These 3 compliance levels stack on top of each other. So if you complete single A level, then you can move on to AA level. And if you want to achieve the AAA level compliance, you need to achieve AAA, AA, and all the single A as well. So these are stacked above each other. And last point that I would like to talk about is very close to my heart: web versus mobile. The WCAG, or the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, I want you guys to focus on the first word, web. It doesn't say mobile. And mobiles are inherently different from the web content because we have smaller sizes, we interact with a finger, and then it can be rotated, it can be taken outdoors. The conditions are ever changing. So that's why the mobile accessibility guidelines need to be rethought. And even the way voiceover works on an iPhone and the way voiceover works on a MacBook is fundamentally different. So that is what we are dealing with. So that is, WCAG is not directly transferable to mobile play, but we can use WCAG as a guideline. So like I said, I work with the MATF, the Mobile Accessibility Task Force, who has been tasked to write the first adapted guidelines like WCAG translated from native mobile apps. Moving on, if you can go to the next slide, please. Yeah, so this is the image that has helped me understand how the WCAG guidelines are structured. If you see, there are 4 principles at the very bottom layer. You can see that it is perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. And then if the guideline number starts with 1, that belongs to perceivable. If it starts with 2, it belongs to operable, and so on. And then there are themes around which the accessibility guidelines have been maintained. So 1.1.1 is basically text of images. Then do we have description for audio and video? Does the app adapt to the user needs? Do we have enough contrast? And so on. The very first version of WCAG was just 14 guidelines, and now we are looking at about 87, combining all this T. Recently, the WCAG 2.2 was released, which saw inclusion of few more guidelines like dragging movements, target size, because we are no longer confined to web where you can like have a pointed mouse to interact with things. Consistent help, like help should always be available in the same place, that kind of guidelines. Authentication for easy access, and the status being carried to the assistive technology as well. So that is 4.1.3. So these are the few guidelines that have been introduced, and I'm pretty sure as we go forward, these are going to go keep on increasing and getting removed. Like we have removed 4.1.1, the parsing thing from WCAG 2.2. So that's the theoretical knowledge. Back to you, Sugandha.
Thank you. Thank you, Ashutosh, for sharing the details about WCAG guidelines, how they are structured, and especially the focus on web versus mobile. Now I invite Shambhavi to share more information about the upcoming European Accessibility Act. Shambhavi?
Thank you, Sugandha. So the EAA legislation is a law that was passed at the European Union level, and that mandates all the countries that are a part of EU or serve the EU region to have all the digital properties become accessible. So it is created to ensure that people with disabilities do not really face any difficulties while they access digital services and products. There is a list of products and services that are listed in the app to be accessible by the time the app goes live. It includes e-commerce platforms, computers and operating systems, e-books, banking services, and so on. So according to the Act, who is a person with disability? It is a very broad definition used in the Act that states anybody with a long-term physical, mental, sensory, or intellectual impairments would be classified as a person with disability. So this is again a very broad definition, which means it includes people who are deaf or hard of hearing, people on the autistic spectrum, people with vision impairments, dyslexia, physical or motor disabilities. But it's not an exhaustive list, but more of a representative sample of what kind of disabilities are covered under the scope of the Act. Now, the EAA is implemented at a country level, and it is an important nuance to understand. All right. So, while the EAA was passed by the European Parliament, the mandate was for every European country to pass their own law in their legislation, which adopts the European Accessibility Act and sets the operational nuances, right? So now, who is the responsible authority? What are the penalties? All of that is not defined by the European Accessibility Act, but by the sub-laws that are implemented at a country level. So these can differ amongst the various European Union countries. So moving on to who is this applicable to? So while it is broadly applicable to all businesses, some of which are listed over here, there are a few exceptions that are explicitly given in the law. One is very small businesses, and we define this as anybody with less than 10 people and an annual turnover or an annual balance sheet of less than 2 million euros. You have to satisfy both the employee count as well as the turnover or balance sheet to be able to qualify as a very small business. The other exception that is mentioned is for businesses for which compliance would essentially change the nature of the product or service offered. For example, if by being accessible, what you're providing to the market becomes completely different, then you're exempt from the law. Another exception is for businesses where compliance would place a disproportionate burden. So, for example, let's say the cost of compliance is like more than 50% of your revenue, then also you can claim an exception. And the last exception is that products and services placed on the market or contracts that entered into the market before EAA compliance deadline have like a 5-year transition period, right? So these existing products and services must become compliant by June of 2030, which is 5 years from the time it goes live. So now having said that, it is still up to the different jurisdictions to interpret this and implement in their legislation, right? So now, beyond legal compliance, there are numerous benefits for organizations to prioritize accessibility as well, which includes increased market reach because a significant portion of European population has disabilities, and accessibility opens doors to a wider customer base. Next, it comes with an enhanced brand reputation, as demonstrating a commitment to accessibility strengthens your brand image and fosters trust with the customers. It also improves the SEO ranking because accessible websites often rank higher in the search engine results, leading to an increased online visibility. And lastly, it leads to a positive user experience, as making your websites accessible benefits everybody, not just the users with disabilities. Now, what happens if you're non-compliant? So again, I would like to state here that the cost of non-compliance and penalties are defined at a country level and not at a European Union level. So they could change country to country. There are some countries like Ireland and Germany that are taking measures beyond just a monetary fine, right? For example, in Ireland, the penalty could be imprisonment, and in Germany, you could have a cease and desist letter as well, which means you can actually have a non-compliant website being taken down. And that is how serious this act is. If we can move on to the next slide, please. So yeah, this is just a quick timeline of how the act progresses. So it was passed in June 2019. All the member countries were expected to have the national laws passed by June 2022. And the act is supposed to go live in July 2025, which is roughly under a year's time from now. So that is the timeline by when all companies need to be compliant with the standards and requirements of the act. And again, I would like to reiterate that this act is applicable as long as the company has any services that is catering to the Europe region, right? So even if it's a US based company but has operations in Europe, they would still have to comply with this act. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. Over to you.
All right. Thank you, Shambhavi. That was a quick and detailed overview of EAA, and especially the importance to act now for achieving compliance. Next, we will move on to the challenges that users and companies face when they are tackling accessibility. But before that, I want to bring up a quick poll to check what our audience thinks. Everyone, you would see a poll popping on your screen. We want to know what are the biggest challenges your organizations face in achieving compliance. Please select an option. We'll keep the poll open for 30 seconds so everyone can respond. All right, thank you for responding. Moving on, Ashutosh, from your point of view as a product designer, right? What are some of the key challenges that you and your teams face when it comes to ensuring that your products are accessible? You're on mute, Ashutosh.
Sorry. There are challenges that as designers I have faced personally, and I'm pretty sure most of the designers face that. First of all is leadership approval, because anything that you want to do needs to have a budget. And whenever it comes to accessibility, the audits are expensive, and then fixing the accessibility, all that goes into a vicious loop. So getting the leadership approval for extended timelines, for extended budget, for extended delivery dates, that is one of the major challenges that we face. The second one is complexity of WCAG. Now, if you look carefully at WCAG, everything is success criteria. That means it's a test at the end of production. So it doesn't really translate very well to how to start achieving those in the early stages of product lifecycle. So that is another part where I am currently working with. So I'm trying to make the WCAG simple for designers. It's hard job. Anyways, moving on, the third one is timeline crunch, because everything we do in IT world has a deadline. And fitting the additional time for accessibility in this particular in this particular timeline crunch can get ignored. So that's why timeline crunch is one of the major factors that we don't have enough time. Most of the time, even research goes out of the picture because of the timeline crunch. So accessibility takes a back burner. The fourth one is lack of actual feedback from real users. Now you can simulate whatever you want to simulate, but the real feedback is the real feedback. You can't. It is almost it is irreplaceable. So and getting the feedback from real people with like people with disabilities can be expensive, can be tricky. We have to follow safety guidelines and social protocols, and it can get really expensive. And the last one is the engineering support. I mean, you can do whatever you want, but engineers have to spend additional effort to add all those checks and balances in the code itself. So we need to get the engineering support, engineering buy-in from the engineering managers, get additional resources and timeline allocated to that. So that is another one of the challenges that we face as designers.
Interesting. Thank you for sharing these challenges, Ashutosh. I'm sure those implementing accessibility in our audience would also relate to these. Now, Shambhavi, given your experience in designing and building BrowserStack's accessibility product from scratch, right? And your extensive research in accessibility testing, according to you, what are some of the key challenges that companies face when ensuring compliance?
Sure, Sugandha. Thanks for the question. So, what we've observed after speaking to a lot of customers is that some of the challenges when it comes to accessibility testing is number one, the status quo tools in the market are not very effective and rather time consuming. So, essentially, they are not able to keep up with the dynamic structure that modern web apps typically tend to have. And they are not very effective in the breadth of testing as well as the depth of testing. The next thing we've kind of realized is that the tools market is highly fragmented. So organizations have to use a variety of tools to test for different aspects of accessibility, uh, like static analyzers versus a screen reader and so on, to ensure that their website is accessible today and over time as well. The other issue that this brings up is that organizations essentially have to evaluate, procure, and maintain a wide variety of tools, each of which would likely come with an onboarding curve of their own. So this juggling between multiple tools can be a tedious process, especially since we would like to collate and consolidate results obtained from multiple sources in one place and in like a unified format, right? Also, testing for accessibility can be a complex task because it requires significant expertise in understanding the WCAG guidelines as well as web development. So this expertise becomes particularly crucial when identifying advanced accessibility issues. So this is still a relatively new area, and there is a shortage of quality talent available with the necessary skills and experience as well. And the other aspect is that manual testing for accessibility issues can be comparatively challenging, and writing explicit test cases for accessibility can again become a big hassle, given the limited expertise in the space again. So automating accessibility testing can play a pivotal role. Although some automation has been incorporated into accessibility testing, there is still ample room for improvement, right? And I would say that organizations also struggle when it comes to testing across different device, browser, OS combinations, all of that, to ensure that the website or native mobile app is accessible across all platforms. So this offering is again not readily available in the market, and that makes the end-to-end testing for accessibility even more difficult.
Got it, got it. Thank you, Shambhavi, for sharing these challenges. That was quite in depth. Now, before we move on, I want to bring up another poll. We want to know which of your digital properties are you currently testing accessibility on? Please select an option. We'll again give you 30 seconds to answer. Okay, thank you for responding to the poll. Now we come to one of the most important parts of the webinar. What are the strategies and best practices that we can implement to build accessible web and mobile products, right? Ashutosh, what do you think? What are your views?
Okay, if you can move on to the next slide, please. So first of all, you need to understand that this takes time. So it needs to start from the grassroots level. So consider additional time for allocating extra resources, the research, the compilation of findings, identifying the actual problems, the solution to the problems, and everything else. So the product lifecycle, you need to consider additional time while committing to the deadlines. That is part number one. The second thing is fixing the design system. Nowadays, the design systems are getting a lot more popularity because of the ease of production. Now, if we can fix the design systems to make more sense and handle the contrast level issues and everything else within the design system, that will help a lot of designers to churn out designs faster. They can understand how this works, and then the engineers will be it will be easier for engineers to implement everything that is being designed. You can get help from plugins. I'm personally I use a big Figma, so I use a lot of plugins to make sure that I use a lot of plugins. First of all, is Stark. Stark is all encompassing tool where you can check the contrast levels. You can you can test your designs by increasing the font. You can simulate a different type of color blindness. You can simulate bright sunlight, glare, everything else. Then you can add the accessibility labels for both iOS and Android. Uh, it's a jam-packed tool. I will highly recommend if you are designing for mobile phones. I highly recommend you start using Stark. If you're a web designer, then there is another tool called Include. So that is highly recommended. It's a Figma plugin as well. Who can use is the website that like everybody can use. Uh, Sorry about the joke, but who can use basically gives you an idea about if you maintain certain type of color contrast, which group of or cohort of people will have difficulty identifying the text from the background. Uh, and then there is also the contrast which sits right in Figma, and you can check the contrast levels and everything that is happening in your app. The next principle is to dog food your own app. Dog fooding your own app means testing internally. So there are various ways you can check the accessibility level of your own app. If I deal with visual impairments a lot, so if you want to test your own app or give feedback internally before it hits the shelves, you can actually turn on the accessibility features and try to implement the same function that you have designed. If you can do it, there is a chance that a disabled person will be able to do. But if you have designed it and you can't complete the task, there is a problem, and you need to go back to the drawing board. Another thing to consider is ensuring proper handover, because handover is the process where designers communicate with the engineers, and ensuring proper handover with all the labels, with all the flows, with and everything tagged properly. Make sure that the engineers have to implement the accessibility features only once, and it reduces the fixing cost. And then always get your hands on right resources. Follow LinkedIn influencers like Sherry Katrina Rivera. She goes by Blindish Latina, if I'm not wrong. Chris Holloway, Carl Goldstraw, Meryl Evans, Dr. Stephanie Cawthon. There is the OG of accessibility called Gareth Ford Williams, who basically wrote the first BBC accessibility guidelines. Then there are books that I will recommend. There is one book called APPT.org. It is available for download on their website. It is a very starter-friendly guide, and the WCAG has been explained in a very fluid manner, in a very biteable size. So they don't go into depth, but they cover everything. I personally have written one book which is more in a prescriptive fashion for designers, how to achieve the WCAG 2.1 for visually impaired people on your phone. So you can try that out. It's available on Amazon. It's called Mobile Accessibility Rituals. Those are the resources that you should get.
Great, great. Thank you, Ashutosh, for sharing these actionable strategies, and also for sharing a great list of resources. Everyone, we've added them in the Zoom chat. Please go through them. All of the resources that Ashutosh mentioned, along with people who you should follow, every one of them are in the Zoom chat. Great. Now, Shambhavi, building on what Ashutosh talked about, right? How does BrowserStack help with coverage for both web and mobile app accessibility testing?
Sure. So we kind of analyzed all the challenges that the organizations are facing within the accessibility testing space. And that's when we kind of ideated a product suite for accessibility testing, both for web apps and for native mobile apps. So ideally, what we are looking to do with our product is to help address all the pain points by providing you with avenues to test and monitor the accessibility health of your website, and also test your native mobile applications to make them accessible and usable to everybody. So this testing evaluates the navigability, readability, and compatibility of the website or native mobile app with assistive technologies, as well as ensures compliance with accessibility standards and inclusivity. So BrowserStack Accessibility Testing Suite introduces a one-stop solution to identify basic and complex accessibility issues in the rendered front end of your website or native mobile app, and monitor the accessibility health of your website to be confident about accessibility compliance and be audit ready at all times. You can schedule monitoring scans to assess the accessibility health of your website over time. You can integrate automated tests into your existing functional test suite using our SDK. You can get instant access to screen readers on real desktop and mobile devices, along with faster workflow scans on web pages as well as native mobile apps. Further, I would also like to call out that the web accessibility testing solution also covers WCAG 2.2, which is the latest set of guidelines issued by the W3 consortium.
Great. Thank you, Shambhavi. With that overview of the BrowserStack Accessibility Suite, we'll also see the product in action with a quick demo. But before that, it would be helpful to know how everyone who's joined us today currently automates accessibility testing. Can we have the poll, please? Yeah, I'll give 30 seconds for everyone to answer before we move on with the demo. Cool. Shambhavi will now show us a quick demo of the product. Shambhavi, over to you, please.
Sure. Just give me a second. Yeah. Sure. So yeah, let's start with a quick demo of our accessibility testing suite. So as you can see, our product is structured to help you scan and monitor your website, perform basic and advanced manual testing, as well as automate accessibility testing. So we would go through each section, and later on, we'll also explore how we can test for accessibility on native mobile apps. So let us start with the website scanner, using which you can get a sense of your website's accessibility, identify areas that need your attention, and also set up recurring scans to monitor your WCAG compliance goals, right? So let us quickly create a website scan. So I'll go ahead and add this page. I'll click on next. So you can specify the name of the scan. You can also set a schedule for the scans to run. So it can keep running at a given frequency. For the purpose of the demo, I'll just go ahead and not select this one. You also have a bunch of additional settings like WCAG guidelines that you would like to cover and stuff like that. So I'll go ahead and create a website scan. So yeah, while this website scan is getting processed in the background, I'll just open another website scan that I had created previously. So yeah, as you can see, this is a scan report. So what we have done over here is we've kind of categorized all the issues based on the severity breakdown based on the affected components, which is essentially a combination of your HTML element, CSS selectors, and stuff like that. There is a categorization based on the pages that have been affected and also on the category. All of these are interactive filters, and clicking on any one of them will apply the filter. So I'll just click on critical over here. So as you can see, we switch to all issues tab, and you can view all of these issues that have been classified in the serious severity or critical severity. I'm sorry, I selected that. So you can choose to view the details of that particular issue, and all the details are provided over here. There's the element details. There is also how to fix section, which gives you a detailed overview of what steps you can take to fix that. You can view these issues by the WCAG guidelines that they violate as well. So this will give you a sense check of all the WCAG guidelines that are being violated, along with the count of issues that are being violated as part of that WCAG guideline. And again, here you have similar view of the issue, a detailed view of the issue, right? You can use this button to share link to this report within members of your team, or also you can generate a public link to share this report with members who have not really logged into BrowserStack. So this is how a report looks like, and once you set a frequency for this report, it will also keep on generating this report at a given frequency that you have selected, and you will keep receiving those reports. So you can always come back and keep on monitoring the accessibility health of your websites. So now I'll move on to automated tests. So automated tests offer a plug and play model wherein you just need to enable a simple code flag in your SDK config file to integrate accessibility testing into your existing functional test suite. And after you complete the integration and run your build, you would be able to see your reports on the dashboard. So this is a report for a sample scan that I had created previously. The structure of this report again is somewhat similar to the earlier report with an additional info on the accessibility health at a test case level as well. Again, all of these are interactive charts, and you can interact with them to view issues as per the filter that you want to apply. And you can view the different issues, the details of different issues as well over here, right? So now moving on, let us explore how we can perform basic and advanced manual testing using our tool. So for the purpose of this demo, I'll be using a demo website that we have created. I'll open the accessibility toolkit from here. So as you can see, we cover both basic and advanced manual testing using our tool. So our workflow analyzer, what it does is it keeps scanning your DOM for issues as you navigate across web pages, and it will identify and report static issues on the rendered front end of your web page. Assisted tests are more of an advanced way of testing in the sense that the scanner would identify potential issues but would need you to confirm the same. And using screen readers, you can actually step into your customer's shoes and test your digital property using screen readers on real devices. So let's start exploring them. You can also choose the WCAG version, and I'll just start a full page scan. So yeah, over here you can see that we found 54 issues in one page and 5 components. So now at this point, I'll not stop the scan, but I'll add this product to cart. The issue count went up due to maybe an additional issue that was found on this slide over. I'll click on checkout. So you see it has gone up to 60 issues in 2 pages and 8 components. So now what happens over here is that the duplicates are removed, are auto removed, and the uniques are grouped by their type, affected components, and WCAG guidelines. So what I'll do is I'll go here and maybe I'll just open this one and I'll highlight this. So you can see that you can also highlight the particular element that was affected in this particular report, and it makes it easier for you to understand the issue where it happened and things like that. And you can also inspect to go ahead and look at exactly where this particular element is present in your code. Again, the structure of this report is similar to what we saw on the dashboard. You have all the things that were present on the dashboard as well. I'll just go ahead and stop the scan and I'll save this report. So I have saved the report. You get an option to share link to this report. You can also export this report as a CSV file, and you can also use this share link to open the report on the dashboard. So yeah, again, you can see that the structure of this is again similar to all the reports that we have seen so far, right? So now let's explore another manual testing tool that can be used for end-to-end testing of a website or native mobile app. You can test with voice over NVDA and talkback on real desktop and mobile devices. So I'll just go ahead and start a session on Mac Monterey. So I would like to re-emphasize over here that all of these are real devices that you'll be testing on. So I'll go ahead and enable the screen reader option.
VoiceOver utility. VoiceOver utility window. Leaving utility categories. Display welcome dialog when VoiceOver starts. Checked checkbox. Control option or caps lock. Keys to use as the VoiceOver. Setup button. Setup port. Safari. Google. Search by voice button. Search by image button. You are currently on a button. To click this button, press Control. VoiceOver off.
So as you can see over here, you can navigate through your entire website using your arrow keys or the tab keys, and you can do the testing using VoiceOver. So I'll go ahead and stop the session over here. And yes, I would like to iterate that screen reader testing is also available for native mobile apps. So you can head over to the app accessibility section and you can start a screen reader from here. So now when it comes to native mobile apps, along with a screen reader offering, we have also created a BrowserStack proprietary rule engine, which is exclusive to the native mobile app to help you find issues automatically. So I'll just start a session on Galaxy S22. Again, this is a real device that is opening up, right? And what this does is it reduces the cumbersome process of having to test for all accessibility issues using the screen reader alone. And the app workflow scanner will automatically detect your accessibility issues on your native mobile apps to make app accessibility testing easier for you. So I had just uploaded a sample APK file for Wikipedia. So I'll just go ahead and install that on my device. So while the device is starting, again, things to note over here are that all of these devices are real devices and not simulators. And the rule engine that we are using for app accessibility is a proprietary rule engine that we have developed, right? So I'll just click on continue over here so that I get to the viewport where I would like to test, right? So I'll just scroll a little bit. Maybe we can just kind of scan this particular viewport, right? So I'll start scanning. So what it is actually doing is, as you can see, it is kind of changing the dimension, changing the alignment, and it is capturing and trying to assess the entire viewport, and it is trying to find issues on that particular viewport, and it is running our proprietary rule engine in the background so that we check all the elements against the WCAG guidelines, and we report issues if there are any found over there. So yeah, you can see that we have captured a screenshot of this particular viewport that we wanted to test, and we have listed down all of these issues. If you hover over them, you can see that they are highlighted within the viewport to make you understand where this is happening. I'll just go ahead and open this one. So you can see we have mentioned all of the details that would be required by you in order to fix this particular violation. We have mentioned the foreground background colors, the ratio, the expected ratio. You can also click on view details to view more details about the element that is getting affected. You also have a how to fix section. So what I'll do is I'll stop this session and save this report again. So it gets saved. And after the report is saved, it will open up this report on the dashboard. And again, the fact that, okay, this has opened up on the dashboard, and the view is similar to what we were seeing in the live session as well. You can view all of these issues. They are categorized by the different rules that are getting affected, and we also highlight all the elements that are getting affected, right? So yeah, again, this rule engine that is used by the app workflow scanner to find violations is a proprietary rule engine that has been created by BrowserStack for native mobile apps, and we are continuously striving to improve on our rule engine so as to accommodate for more violations seamlessly. And along with this, we are also exploring an automation feature to help detect issues in an automated fashion for native mobile apps. And at this point, I would also like to share that we are planning for the general availability of app accessibility testing solution very, very soon. So watch out. So yeah, that brings me to the end of the demo. I'll hand it over to you, Sugandha.
Yeah. Thank you, Shambhavi, for this detailed demo. I'm sure the audience took many inputs from here. Now, I also want to pick up a quick poll. So if you want to know, if you want to evaluate BrowserStack accessibility testing for your web and app needs, please respond to the poll that's popping up on your screen. Someone from our team would get in touch. I'll wait 30 seconds for everybody to respond. Okay, all right. Thank you for responding. All right. With that, we come to the end of the presentation. Thank you, Shambhavi and Ashutosh, for your insightful advice. We covered a lot of ground today, from understanding the WCAG guidelines, the upcoming EAA, to exploring the challenges and the proven strategies for achieving accessibility compliance. Now, we'd love to hear from you. If you have any questions, please type them into the Q&A box. We'll do our best to address as many as possible. Let's open the floor for questions. I'll read out the questions for you. Give me 1 second. Right. So one of the questions is, when do companies need to become compliant after new WCAG versions are released? Ashutosh, would you like to take this up?
Okay, I'm going to give the most cliched answer here. It depends. Because it depends upon how many guidelines have been added, how many have been removed, what are the changes. So whenever a new version of WCAG is released, there is a change log document that comes along with it. So depending upon the content in the change log, it can be 1 year to 5 years. Even with European Accessibility Act, there is a grace period of one year, if I'm not wrong. So yeah, it depends upon how much the guideline has changed.
Got it. Thanks, Ashutosh. Another question we have is, do you support WCAG 2.2? I think they mean by BrowserStack. So Shambhavi, would you like to take it up?
Okay, sure. Yes, we do support WCAG 2.2, testing against WCAG 2.2 guidelines. The web accessibility testing solution does support that right now. And for the app, we are developing that, and it will be out very, very soon.
Okay, sure. Thanks. All right, we have another question. My company is not practicing WCAG. How to introduce or present this to the company so we can practice and add it on our test cases? Ashutosh, would you like to take this up? How to introduce WCAG to your company?
Start with the basics. I always say that it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. So you need to start with like getting the basics right. Then you need to invest a little bit in testing and research. But at the same time, if you want to introduce, you can basically display the opportunity cost. So imagine that there are 4.2% people. Like I do it for visual, right? So 4.2% people who suffer from some kind of visual impairments. So estimate the amount of money you're losing by not making the product accessible, and that should give you a leeway. Like it should get your foot in the door, and then you can continue the conversation from there.
Yeah, I hope that answers the question. We have another one. If you work in an agency outside of Europe and you're building a website for a client in Europe, who does the responsibility with the ACT fall to? The client or the agency? Shambhavi?
I think again, it really depends on whether the client has to comply to the accessibility standards, which would mean since EA is applicable to anybody who's operating in the Europe region, so the client does need to be compliant with WCAG. So I guess it falls with the client, to get compliant, and the agency should, discuss it with the client.
Got it. Cool. This is a BrowserStack specific question. Shambhavi, you can take it up probably. Can we test the accessibility issues of a particular part of a web page only using BrowserStack accessibility testing suite? Also, can it test the focus visible and focus movement issues?
Great. So the first part of the question talks about testing for a particular part of a page. So yes, we do support that. So in the workflow analyzer a solution that I just showcased, you do have an option to scan the full page or a part of a page as well. So yes, you can select the particular part of the page that you want to test for, and you can test for that part of a page. All the automatic issues, that automatic issue detection will be done for that particular part of a page. We are also exploring ways on how we can introduce part of a page testing within the website scanner and the automated testing solution. So yeah, they are under the works, but for a workflow analyzer, you can do that. Now coming to the other part of the question, which is the focus visible. We do not support that right now. However, we have a dedicated team which is working on building a proprietary rule engine of our own, so that you can detect more and more issues using an automatic method rather than having to test for those guidelines manually. So we are working on these guidelines as well, and I think we can keep you posted whenever we have them ready.
Great, great, great. Another question, any website who are WCAG friendly? If we can name any websites, Ashutosh, probably you can.
Oh, government.uk. I mean, they have done tremendous amount of work to make the website very accessible, and that has been used as gold standard. Like everybody points to them and says that, yeah, this is what you need to achieve.
Got it. Another question, does US-based businesses also need to comply with the new EU accessibility laws if their website also reaches to European customers? I think yes is the answer for this.
Yes. So as I mentioned, anybody who operates in the Europe region or who caters to the Europe region will have to comply with the EAA.
Got it. Maybe we can take one or two questions more. This is a BrowserStack specific, I think, but can the screen reader testing also be done in our code base? For example, if you have design system components in some case, we want to set an ARIA label or a screen reader only text. Is it possible to test what screen readers are actually seeing in tests instead of testing the attribute itself?
That's an interesting question. Right now, we support, launching of screen readers and testing it manually. But again, we are exploring ways of, how can we do this using our code base. So yeah.
Got it. Another question, is the screen reader feature limited to the native screen reading tool that my host machine offers? That is, can I use NVIDIA instead of VoiceOver on my Mac machine?
So basically, the screen reader feature that we offer on the different devices, they come with VoiceOver on Mac, NVDA on Windows, and TalkBack on Android. So if you start a screen reader session using our tool, right, you can only use VoiceOver on Mac. But if you are testing on your own machine, you can always install the different screen reader applications to test on your own Mac machine. So yes, if you want to test for NVDA instead of VoiceOver on your own machine, you can do that. But if you want to test for all of this using our solution, then probably you'll have to go with the options that are specified within our solution.
Got it. Cool. Okay. Another question here. In manual testing, some issue we are facing occurs for one combination of OS plus browser plus screen reader, but not on others. How can we make sure that it is an issue or not?
Sure. So I guess you can read through. So each success criteria specifies a list of different success techniques that you need to comply to in order to become completely compliant with that particular guideline. So if it is not occurring on one particular driver OS browser screen reader combination, but occurring on others, it is likely causing a violation because it is occurring on one combination. So you can read through the techniques and see if that is a violation or not.
Okay. Yes, I think that's the end of the questions that I can see from the Q&A box. If anybody has any more questions, please feel free to type them in. We're constantly monitoring the Q&A box. Thank you everyone for your engaging questions and participation. I hope you found the session useful. As we wrap up, I'd like to extend a special thanks to our speakers, Ashutosh and Shambhavi, for sharing their expertise with us today. Remember, ensuring accessibility is an ongoing journey, and staying informed and proactive is the key to making meaningful progress. We will be sending out a recording of this webinar in your inbox, but thank you again for joining us. Have a great day.